Happy Hero February is what I would say if it wasn't already basically over. Sorry about that, guys. I really do love Hero Factory, but I can't lie. It's been a good while since I last built a real Hero Factory or Bionicle mock for that matter. Plus, because I started too late in the month, I couldn't really order parts from Bricklink that could have made this mock a tad bit more color accurate, but I think what I made so far still looks serviceable. Anywho, this might be the most controversial thing I'll have said up to this point on my channel, but I actually think the best iteration of William Furno would be his 3.0 form. I personally just love the way he looks from his helmet being shaped like that of an eagle head, but also at the same time making him look like he's wearing a hood down to his striking Mata Red and gunmetal color combination, just like Bakuda Pterodax, another great LEGO action figure from back in the day, might I add. And because of his relatively short size and small part count, he was sold for the low price of only $8 back in the day, which is a huge steal for such a great set, but that was 2011, which was 15 years ago. And the one thing about the time that's passed between then and now is that time hasn't been the kindest when it comes to buying sets like this one on the aftermarket. You see, for Hero February, I wanted to revamp Furno 3.0, but there was no way I was shelling out nearly $20 for a complete set from Bricklink or eBay, so I compromised and did the next best thing. I went on AliExpress and created a new account so I can get that cool new user discount. I just bought a knockoff of Furno 3.0. Buying bootlegs off AliExpress for the sole purpose of revamping them is something I've actually done before with, for example, Lewa Uniter, a video I did many months ago. But I've also bought legit sets for revamping, as well like my last Hero February mob of Vapor in bulk. It really all comes down to just availability and how expensive a legitimate set is before I consider revamping it, either legit or with a knockoff. I also could care less if my legit pieces mix with bootleg parts. As long as they're compatible, I'm gonna use them either way. The AliExpress Ferno came within a little over a week later, and before beginning on the revamp, I knew I had to build it once the normal way. And I gotta say, these bootlegs are practically one-to-one with original LEGO, and way more affordable too, with some sellers even bundling 6 heroes for a little more than $20, makes these a great gift for new Hero Factory fans, especially those who are younger and weren't around for the original run back in the day. Now for the build itself, I started with the legs, particularly the lower legs, because I wanted to have a starting basis for how large this mob would be, and I was very inspired by Furno 3.0's silhouette, which seemed to focus more on armoring the lower parts of his limbs. I knew from the get-go that I wanted to give him thick lower legs to make it appear like he's wearing boots. Luckily, these 1.0 Hero Factory leg armor pieces are perfect for pulling off that effect. I fastened it all together with pressure from the smallest Hero Factory shell and a bar piece. I used the dark bluish gray Titan bootleg Technic piece that I got off Zion Tyro a few months ago to act as the connection point between the thigh and lower leg. Plus, I found that a red slicer foot works well on top to help keep the inner components of the lower leg hidden and the build clean. Now the only problem I had was how I would exactly fill in the gaps in the armor, but luckily I had these rubber ribbed hose pieces from the dinosaur set that worked very well, and had the added bonus of being discreet. And to help beef up the lower legs a bit more, I added these Tahu Stars armor pieces to the back of his legs. They worked perfectly, and on top of that, they help keep the hose contained. I put these dish pieces to the side for texture, and to fill in some visible open space from the side. And with that, the lower leg was nearly done. Just had to focus on the feet, which all I did was take 2 Mata Red feet and added these small sharp dagger pieces to simulate foot claws. I figured since he's part bird, he would appreciate having claws. The only downside is they flop around, but you can get away with this by pressing the daggers on the roof of the inner foot, and they'll manage to stay in place. I also added these rubber Technic connector pieces to the bottom of the feet to keep the mock from sliding from all the weight that'll be added onto the build. Now, the upper legs were simply just a Bionicle hand and ball with axle sandwiched between 2 Technic cam pieces. I covered up the build from the front with these large figure armor pieces. I would have used black armor pieces, but I only had them in gunmetal. Overall, I think it actually suits him better since the actual Furno 3.0 set has barely any gunmetal, which I thought was a shame because it's a very nice color on him. From here, I started to work on the torso, and of course this had to be fully custom too. At this point, I had entered a flow state, and everything was really falling into place. I had my work cut out for me since using the chest plate was a must because of the hero core. On top of using the 2.0 chest plate, I also wanted to include a 2.0 shield piece on Furno's back, because if you had watched the Ordeal of Fire and the Savage Planet episodes, you'd know they all have that piece incorporated into the 3D models used for the show, and I liked the added bulk it gave the heroes. At this point, it was all a matter of getting the shape to look seamless with the armor, since the two pieces took up the majority of what people would see, so I mostly focused on filling any remaining gaps. I added Exoforce robot arms and these small pin bushings around the chest area to fill in space behind the hero core armor. These Noodle Technic connector pieces also worked really well to give Ferno a familiar look on the lower part of the torso. The icing on the cake here was I just happened to have them in gunmetal, the same color as Furno 3.0's inner torso armor. I also added this black pentagonal shield-like piece to give him a more angled look around the lower torso as well. Combined with the thigh armor, everything flows seamlessly here. I also added this black piece on the lower back to help cover the back part of the connection point for the legs. I worked on the lower arms here, and I wanted to give them mixel joint hands because they look so clean. I added these smaller clip pieces for the fingers instead of traditional Exoforce robot arms because their static straight cut appearance just looks so much better than those angled arm pieces for fingers. I replaced Ferno's small red armor for his arm with a larger Hero Factory armor piece because I thought it would look cleaner if both lower armor pieces were symmetrical. I'm also using this spare Rocket 3.0 shell for now, until I can replace it with Furno's 3.0 armor piece. For the upper arms, I actually deviate from the original set and instead bulk them up with his breakout armor in gunmetal. The reason I do this is because I wanted to fill in the space between his shoulder and torso. I know the upper arms should be reserved for his gliding wings like in the original set, but I have something else in mind for his wings. I then connect his upper and lower arms with these two black plates. One side has a connector piece with an axle, and the other uses a connector piece with a pin. The reason I use a pin instead of an axle is because with a pin, I can get way more posability and mobility in his arms on top of being double jointed. To add to the stability of this system connection, I added these studs with bars to the underside to reinforce the build. Ferno is almost done, but he's still missing his tools, so for his wings, I built this large wing backpack piece. If you can't tell, I was heavily inspired by Holly Mari when making this. You may have noticed that the wings in the middle are black, and that's just because I am out of the piece in silver, but I think it actually looks really cool. See, sometimes not having infinite Bionicle parts can breed creativity, or maybe I'm just coping. I don't know. Everything is connected with these 2x2 round plates with a 2 long axle inside for added reinforcement. I connected the whole thing to the silver Metru torso armor, and used these third-party mixel joints to give the wings posability. And finally for his weapon, I gave him a simple bow, since I just learned it's apparently a bow and not some kind of double-headed sword like Brutaka's blades. I used the bar instead of an axle to connect the two parts together because the bar lets Ferno hold the bow by slipping it under the thumb. I wanted to add the green string from the Battle of Metronui Coliseum set to act as a bow string, but I didn't have it, and honestly, the bow was such an afterthought that I just retconned it to be a double-headed blade in my head. Who cares, it's my build. And putting it all together, we have my Revamp Furno 3.0. It was a really fun set to remix and recreate in my own style. I was actually very surprised that I only needed the helmet and the shell armor piece, but I also imagine just buying those two parts from Bricklink would have been more expensive than just buying the bootleg that had way more parts. Speaking of AliExpress, just so you know, I had to cut a ton of parts to build this, but I only cut AliExpress bootleg pieces when needed. And even though Hero February is over, you can always build and mock Hero Factory any time of the year, so try revamping one of your favorite sets from this amazing theme for yourself. And of course, have fun. I'll make sure to take some high quality photos and post them on my Instagram, so check the description for the link to my page. And of course, thank you for watching all the way to the end, and if you haven't already, consider subscribing and leaving a like before you go. See you all in the next video. Bye for now.